Hello everybody and welcome back. Mr. Youngman here, and today we're going to be going over how to complete the audio editing progression assignment number 1, DaVinci Resolve. We're going to be using DaVinci Resolve instead of Adobe Premiere Pro like we originally planned due to some licensing issues that we're currently sorting out with Adobe. With that being said, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do on this assignment is download the files that go with it. To do this, we're going to click on where it says Stars and Beauty for Students. We're going to go to these 3 dots in the top right corner, click on them, and hit Open a New Window. From this screen, we're able to access the Download button. This is located at the top right. We'll just click Download. Lastly, on the screen here, where it says Google Drive can't scan this file for viruses, just hit Download anyway. This is a file that I uploaded and created myself, so no worries there. We can track our progress of our download in the top right here. Once it completes, we're going to minimize Safari using this yellow button at the top. Then, we'll open a new Finder window by going down and selecting the smiley face on our taskbar. We'll go to Downloads on the left, and inside of our folder here, we should see 2022-05-04 Stars and Beauty for Students. This is the file that we just downloaded from Google Drive. Inside of this folder, you'll see that we have audio that's separated out by sound effects and dialogue. If you'll remember, Stars and Beauty is an audio drama that we listen to in class. This is a project that I created in college with a few friends, and I think it's a really enjoyable project to get started with learning how to edit audio dramas. The first thing we're going to do now that we've downloaded our files is open DaVinci Resolve. The easiest way to do this is to select the magnifying glass at the top right of the screen, and then searching for DaVinci Resolve. It should come up on this list as I've installed them on all of these lab computers myself. We'll double-click on DaVinci Resolve, and it should start the process of opening the application. Now, while we're waiting on this to load, I'm going to go over one small note. While we are currently stuck using DaVinci Resolve is still an excellent and free editing application that you can choose to use if you so desire. It is used even in Hollywood-level productions, and is definitely a strong contender in the race, with the added benefit of being free, unlike Adobe. While we're talking about it, most non-linear editing programs, that's what these are going to function fairly similar to each other when we're in the professional category. So even if we're learning DaVinci Resolve here today, a lot of the skills we're going to talk about are going to transfer over to any other editing program you may choose to use. With that out of the way, let's get started with DaVinci Resolve. On this screen here, I'm just going to double-click where it says Untitled Project. Now let's talk about this editing interface a little bit. By default, it's going to open up the Cut page. The Cut page is a simplified editing interface for beginning editors. Unfortunately, it's not really up to par with what we're able to do with a full-fledged editor. We're largely going to disregard this for our class. To the left of this page, we have the Media page. This is where we will be importing any files into our project so that DaVinci Resolve can work with them. After this, we have the Editing page. This is where the bulk of our editing will take place. We'll go into a little bit more detail later on in this video. Next to the editing interface, we have the Fusion interface. Now, Fusion is a special effects program that's built right into DaVinci Resolve. This is way beyond the scope of our class here, but if you're interested in learning about it, there are tons of videos available online that you could check out. Just be ready for a very difficult learning curve. It's something that I still struggle to use myself. Next to Fusion, we have the Color page. This is where we're able to perform color correction on our videos if we so desire. Since we're going over audio today, this won't really apply to you. Next, we have the Fairlight page. Now, the Fairlight page is a wonderful addition to DaVinci Resolve. This is a workspace that is specifically tailored for working with audio. Now, while it's true that this is a fantastic audio editing interface, We're also not going to be using this today either. I want you to get used to working in a traditional NLE, nonlinear editor, editing work environment, rather than using the custom-built one that Fairlight provides. This is just because this will be more universally applicable to other editing programs outside of DaVinci Resolve. Lastly, we have the deliver page. This is where we put a nice bow on all the files that we've edited together and prepare it for final distribution. This can be either going online or even to a movie theater, maybe a TV broadcast station. All that is done from inside this page here. With all that out of the way, let's get started on the actual editing. We'll go to the media page to start. That's the one on the far left at the bottom here. We'll go to Colby disk here, just clicking on it once, and then we'll go to users. Just double click on it to open it. We're going to look for our user account in here. You'll see that there's a bunch of student accounts already on here. Today, we're stuck using the Media Arts guest account. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, this has been resolved, no pun intended. But if that's not the case, we'll just go ahead and look for Media Arts. This should be in alphabetical order here. Disregard, it looks like it is not in alphabetical order, so you may have to search around a bit. We'll double click on Media Arts. Then we'll go to Downloads. And you can see in here, we have Stars and Beauty. If I switch over to this list view real quickly, we can see that name a little bit better. Just trust that 2022-05-04 is the files that we're looking for. I'm going to switch back to our original view, just so we're on the same page. Now, I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard and click on my folder. Letting go of Control, I'm going to go down to Add Folder and Subfolders into Media Pool, Create Bins. And you'll see that DaVinci Resolve has successfully imported our files, or rather, it's in the process of importing our files. It may take a minute for it to load. And we can see that the spinning wheel has gone away and it's finished loading. So inside of here, you'll see that DaVinci Resolve has kept our folders for us. So everything is nice and organized, where we have dialogue and sound effects in one area, and then we have a separate area for project files. We'll be disregarding this project files. It's just a part of our normal structure we like to use in class. So the main part we want to be paying attention today then is the audio section. We're going to switch over to the editing page now and begin taking a closer look at the contents of this folder. So I'll select Edit at the bottom of the panel here to switch over to Editing View. And then I'll double click on Dialogue. We'll start with Girl, as the girl is the first one who talks in the sound piece, Stars and Beauty. You can see that I've taken the time to mostly organize these files for you. They go largely in order here, where 0F is going to be the girl, the female, and B is going to be boy. This one accidentally slipped by in my organization. It should be in the boy folder, but just know that B is for boy and F is for female. If we double click on a file here, it'll open it in the source panel. The source panel is this one on the left, also sometimes known as the preview panel. We can see that there's this graph here showing when people are talking. The louder something is, the wider that graph becomes. If I click and drag on this orange bar, it'll allow me to go forward and backwards on the clip. I'm just going to go all the way to the beginning here. Next, I'll use this play button to listen to it. And we're going to unmute the computer. That'll make it a little bit easier to listen.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
So you can hear that this is the opening line from Stars and Beauty, where the girl's asking, do you ever wonder where they come from? Let's listen one more time.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
All right, so now that we've identified which clip we want to use first, we're just going to hover our mouse over it in the preview panel, or in the project panel, sorry. We're going to hover our mouse over it in the project panel, and we're going to click and drag it into what's called our timeline. The timeline is where we're going to organize all of our audio clips or video clips into a cohesive final structure. Let's talk about that timeline for a minute and explain how it works. So on the far left end here, we have the beginning of our edit, the beginning of time. On the far right, we have the ending of our video, or the end of our edit. You can see that this number right here will increase or decrease as we get farther or closer from the beginning. So as I start moving this orange playhead to the left, towards the beginning, you can see it counts down to 0. If I move it the other way, it'll count up, onward and onward forever. You'll notice that there's a 1 here. DaVinci Resolve has this really weird convention where they like to add 1 hour to the beginning of our time code here. You can just safely ignore that. This is really just 0 seconds, or 0 minutes, sorry, 0 seconds, and 0 frames. Let's talk about navigating this timeline a little bit too. As an editor, it's going to be critically important to learn how to use the keyboard shortcuts to move around. I want you to get in the habit of trying to use the J, K, and L keys in order to navigate your edit. The L key will play forward on your timeline.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
The K key will stop its playhead in its current spot, and the J key will play your edit in reverse.
There were no worries.
This can be super useful if you're trying to find the very beginning or very end of an audio clip that you want to trim down. For example, if I wanted to trim down this clip so it starts right when she's about to start talking, I'm going to navigate forward using the L key, and I'm going to use the K key to try to stop right where I think it's about to start. I overshot it a little bit, so I'm going to use the J key to reverse a little bit. Just a tiny bit. And right after I hit that J key, I'm hitting K again to stop it in its spot. If we want to trim this clip to the current length, I'm going to start by moving my mouse into the center vertically of our clip. You can see it shows this icon here. If I click and drag now to where my playhead is, the clip should now start exactly when she is about to start talking.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
And we nailed it. If we wanted to trim down the end, we can do the same exact thing. I've just stopped the clip where I think it should end. I'm going to go to the right side of it and click and drag it to the left to trim it down. Now, you'll notice that we have a small gap in our edit here. If we leave it as is, there'll be a 10 frame window where we don't hear or see anything in our edit. Let's take care of that. To move a clip, we're going to click and drag it to slide it over to the left here. We can also slide it to the right or wherever we need to reposition it. I'm going to slide this all the way to the left. All right, so now how do we add additional clips to this? Well, we're going to go into the boy bin here, boy folder, and we're going to go to 0M. These are largely in order. There may be 1 or 2 that are out of place, but I've tried to take the time to get these organized for you guys. I'm going to click and drag this right next to the first clip that we have on our timeline. Now, if I use the L key, we can hear the whole edit so far.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
The stars?
And we are starting to form a conversation. If I click and drag this second clip down, I can move it onto a second track. Tracks are used to organize similar types of clips together. So if we take a listen, you'll hear that this actually hasn't changed how this sounds at all.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
The stars?
The power of tracks comes from the ability to play multiple audio bits at the same time. For example, if I slide this over to the left here, and I move my playhead back to the beginning, you can now hear both people speaking at the same time.
Do you ever wonder where they
Stars?
come from?
Now, in this particular case, it's not very useful to have them speaking at the same time, but maybe it could be if we want to add in some more sound effects. So I'm going to use Command Z to undo the change and slide this back to its original spot. The additional power of tracks comes from the organizational aspect. By having clips on different tracks, it makes it pretty easy to identify who's talking when. So if I have all of the girls' clips on track 1 and all of the boys' clips on track 2, it makes it really easy for me to hunt down any spots where I might need to make changes. Let's go back to that previous bullet point about playing multiple sounds at once. I'm going to go into the sound effects folder here, and I'm going to navigate to Grass in the Field, I think it's called, or Grass in the Wind. So it's 135870. As a quick note, if your layout does not look like mine, just hit these icons right here. This is the list view, where it will only show the names of files rather than any graphical representation of it. By default, we are going to be on this thumbnail view. I just personally find it much easier to use the list view instead. I'm going to click on list view, and this will put it back into the full named format. So we're going to click and drag this Grass in the Wind down below everything else, because we want it to be playing at the same time as this conversation. We're using this to establish that the characters are in a grassy field.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
The stars?
And now we can hear our grassy field at the same time as we hear our characters. Let's do a little bit of work to deepen our soundscape and make it more interesting. I'm going to use this Summer in Georgia clip, 197328. I'm going to click and drag that underneath everything else. And again, I'm going to move my playhead back to the beginning. If you'd like, you can use the J, K, and L keys to accomplish the same thing. I'm going to hit L to play this forward.
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
The stars?
And now we can hear the crickets at night, making this into a more immersive soundscape. And it's helped us to establish that this is happening at nighttime rather than during the day. One thing I would like to point out is we do have a little bit of a problem with the audio here. At the beginning of this Summer Night in Georgia clip, you can hear a small bump of the microphone. That's not great, so let's fix that. I'm just going to trim this clip by clicking and dragging from the left side to my playhead. Then I'm going to move the entire clip to the left so it starts at the right time. You may notice that I used a small trick there to make it easier to identify where that problem was, and that is going to be soloing a track. This little S button next to any of these tracks will solo it. If we click on the solo button and then play back,
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
you can hear that the solo button will make it so you only hear the tracks that are soloed. If I solo multiple tracks at once,
Do you ever wonder where they come from?
you will hear every track that has been soloed. This can be really useful if you want to narrow in your focus on one part of the edit. I'm going to unsolo these now. Another important button to be looking at is going to be the mute button. That's this M right here. If we mute a track, we will hear everything except the muted track.
The stars?
Just useful to know. Now that we've been working for a little while, it's going to be important to be building the habit of saving early and saving often. To save inside of DaVinci Resolve, we're going to use Command S. Alternatively, we can go to File up at the top and select Save Project. Unlike the online programs that we've been using in the past for this classroom, DaVinci Resolve will not automatically save your work for you. You have to be very conscientious about saving early and saving often to make sure that you're not going to lose any of your hard work. With that out of the way, let's talk about a little bit more on this timeline. I'm going to start by talking about how to zoom in and out here. When our timeline is starting to get more and more things on it, it can be useful to get a wider view of our timeline. I'm going to click and drag this dot to the left towards the minus to zoom out, or to the right towards the plus sign to zoom in. If I zoom out far enough, we can see where our tracks end. This can be very useful if you're working with longer tracks, such as this Summer Night in Georgia, which extends for a whopping 16 minutes here. I'm going to shorten down the whole thing, as that's a little bit excessive. Now, I'm going to zoom back in using that same slider. All right, so now that we've established how to start the basics of building our edit here, let's talk about more what we're looking for in this assignment. I would like you guys to try your best to recreate the first act of Stars and Beauty. I want you to use the provided dialogue and sound effects to try to recreate it as best as you can. This should take you to roughly the 1 minute mark and will be a really good introduction to how to do this editing for your own audio drama projects. Once we're actually finished with our edit, it's going to be important that we know how to actually save it and turn it in. For that, we're going to go to this Deliver page right here and click on that. On here, we're going to slide along the top and select Audio Only on the top left. Under Audio, we're going to go to Format, and we're going to change that to Wave. Then, we're going to select where it says Single Clip, and just make sure that that Single Clip button is checked. Lastly, we'll give it a name. I'm going to name this Audio Session 1 Youngman. As long as you have your name in there and you sort of get the idea across of what exercise we're doing, I'm more than happy to take it. The final step here in setting up our render is going to be to hit this Browse button. It may take a minute to load the interface. We're just going to select this drop-down arrow next to where it says Where, go to the desktop, and just hit Save. Then, once we've confirmed everything is as it should be on the screen, we'll hit Add to Render Queue. Our last step in actually converting this into a file we could listen to, or if this was a video, a file we could watch, it's just going to be to click on the job here and select Render All. Once it has finished rendering, we can minimize DaVinci Resolve by hitting this yellow button. But of course, we'll want to save early and save often first. I'm going to hit Command S. Then I'm going to minimize using this yellow button. I have a few extra things here, so let me just get these out of the way. You can see that on our desktop, we have saved the file that we just created. So once you have completed all of your editing, make sure you render this out into a .wav file, a WAV file, and get this uploaded to Google Classroom so I can check it out. I won't be grading too harshly on this assignment, as I want to make sure that we're just learning the important fundamentals of editing here. So just do your very best with it, and I'll be more than happy to give you your full points. As always, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask me either during class or online. It's what I'm here for, and it's what I really enjoy doing. I want to see each and every one of my students succeed and learn a lot. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see each and every one of you either in class or in the next video. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.